Let's try to understand Promise.all.Settled in this video. The Promise.all.Settled static method takes an iterable of promises as input and returns a single promise. This returned promise fulfills when all of the inputs promises settle with an array of objects that describe the outcome of each promise, which means it takes a list of promises, and when all of the given promises are in the settled state, the returned promise from all settled will be in fulfilled state. Let's try to understand this example. Here we have two promises. The first one immediately resolve with the value 3, and the second one rejects after 100 milliseconds with the value foo. Now, promise.all.settled is invoked with these two promises in an array, and we are calling the then method. Okay. Now, once both the promises are in settled state, the on fulfilled callback will be executed with the array. So here you can see that we are looping through the array and we are logging the status field. Here you can see that the first promise fulfill with the value 3 and the second promise rejects with the value foo. But the result array will have objects. So each object will have the corresponding status field and value field if it is fulfilled and the reason field if it is rejected. So if you come here, let's take this example. All settled is called with this array. Here, the first one immediately fulfills with the value 33, and the second one fulfills with the value 66, and the third one is a primitive value which is 99, and the fourth one reject with an error object. Now you can see that here we are directly logging the value. Okay, now the result here you can see that the first one, the object having status of fulfilled and value of 33, and the second one, the status is again fulfilled with the value 66. Third one is not a promise instance, but like the other concurrent method, it converts it into a promise internally, and its status is also fulfilled and the value is 99. And the last one, the status is rejected and the field is reason here, not value. Okay, now here the reason is the error object. Now let's take this example and test in this console. Okay, so you can see that the first one fulfilled, the second one is rejected. Now let's change this a little bit. Here, let's print the result as it is. So you can see that this is how it returns. The status field, the first one fulfilled and the value 3, and the second one, the status is rejected and the reason is foo. Now what happens if we pass an empty array? So when we pass an empty array, it fulfills with an empty array. And we can do the same with any empty iterable. Here also it will return an empty array. And like other methods, if we pass some items which are not iterable, here this empty object is not an iterable, let's add the catch method. So it rejects with the type error, object is not iterable. Now let's implement Promise.all.Settled. Now we have completed Promise.race, all, and Promise.any. Now the last static method, Promise.all.Settled. Okay, all settled static method takes an iterable of promises and it immediately returns a new promise instance. Now here, first we have to check if this is an iterable or not. So we can use the same check. And we need a try catch block. So if type of promises of symbol.iterator is not a function, then we will reject with the type error. Which means here this object should be having a field symbol.iterator and its value should be a function. then only this object becomes an iterable. If that's not the case, we will use the reject function, and the reason will be a type error, and the message is object is not iterable. Now we have to convert this iterable object into an array. Okay, for that we have to use array.from. Now this returns a new array, and we can store it into a variable. Now what should we do if this list is empty, or this is an empty iterable? So we have to use the resolve function. Okay, we will resolve with an empty array here. In both the places we are adding the return because we have to stop the further execution. Now, if the list is not empty, then we have to iterate through the list. So here I'm using a normal for loop, just like any other methods that we have implemented because of performance reasons. So this is a library function, and we don't know how big should be the input iterable. So we can use for each method here, but if the input is too large, then this for loop performs better. So that's why we are using this normal for loop here. So here you can see that we are using the resolve static method here, and we are giving each of the item. Why we need that? This input iterable can have promise instances as well as normal values, which are not promise instances. So we have to convert everything into promise. That's why we are using this resolve static function. Now we can use the then method. Okay. Now here, what we have to do? We have to resolve with an array, and the array should be having object specifying the status and the value or the reason. So we need an array. So for that, right? Now we have to pass the on fulfilled and on rejected. Here we get the value, and here we get the reason. This is the on fulfilled callback, and this is the on rejected callback. And what we have to do when we get the value, we have to add that into result. And this time we are not directly adding the value like this. We have to push an object instead of this, like this. And here status will be fulfilled and value. So value should be this value. Okay. Now similarly, here when we get the reason, we are adding it here, and status. So when the original promise instance is rejected, the second callback will be executed. When it is fulfilled, the first callback will be executed. So if it is fulfilled, then the field name is value. If the instance is rejected, then the field name is reason, not value. Okay. Now when we use the resolve function in this loop, so when all of them are settled, we have to call the resolve method. So how to track that? We can have a separate variable here, and its initial value will be 0. Now when we add this, we have to increment completed, and we have to do the same here as well. Now what we have to do? We have to check. So we have to do this at both places. So what we are doing here, in the on fulfilled callback, we are getting the value, and we are using the index, and we are giving this object where status is fulfilled, and the value field is value is this one, and we are incrementing the completed, and we are checking if the length is equal to completed. If this check pass, that means all of them are completed. Then we will resolve with the result array. And we have to do the same in the case of on rejected as well. and we are using the index, and we are using the index here to maintain the order. Okay, that's why we are not using the push method. Okay, now we incrementing the variable here, and we are doing the same check. I mean, this code is repeated. We can refactor it. Okay, now what happens if some error happens? We will reject it with the error object. Okay, now you can see that both places we are repeating, right? So instead, what we can simply do here, we can simply return an object with status as fulfilled and value. Okay, similarly here we can return status as rejected and reason. Now the common logic, we can add a separate then, and here we will get the value. Okay, so you can see that in on fulfilled also we are returning, and in on rejected also we are returning an object. So in both cases, this on fulfilled of this then will be executed with the returned value from above. So we will definitely get either this object or this object. Now simply what we can do here, result of I value and completed plus plus. If list.length value completed solve with the result. Okay. Now here instead of opening a function like this and adding it, since we have only the return statement, we can modify this to okay. So we can simply return this object, and in the next then we add the common logic. Okay, so this is the implementation, and we can test it. So let's use this example here, paste it, and we can change this to our promise class. My promise okay. Instead of looping through, let's just um, try to print the result as it is. So you can see that the first one, the status is fulfilled and the value is 3. The second one, status is rejected and the reason is foo. Okay, let's change the same example and let's change this time to 4 seconds. Now what happens? You can see that it is in the pending state, and after 4 seconds the returned promise will be in the fulfilled state. So it wait till all of the given promises are in the settled state. So in this case, the first promise instance settles immediately with the value 3, fulfills with the value 3, and the second one will be in pending state, and after 4 seconds it will be in the rejected state with this value. So you can see that status is fulfilled and status is rejected. Let's try with an empty array. So we get an empty array as the fulfilled value. Here we can try with an empty string. Okay, now let's try an empty object, and we can pass the on rejected callback as well. We get the type error, object is not iterable. Okay, so everything is working. So this is the implementation of Promise.all.settled. So we have completed the uh, concurrent static methods Promise.race, Promise.all, Promise.any, and the last one Promise.all.settled. Thank you for watching.